So ever since the 5th season of Game of Thrones, there's been a slow-growing resentment towards this adaptation of George Martin's work. The majority of the story arcs had surpassed the unfinished book series, so the show writers had to come up with their own resolutions, and there was a noticeable dip in quality. The special effects, cinematography, and acting were still top-notch, but the story and dialogue honestly felt like fanfiction. There were still a lot of good moments throughout the 5th, 6th, and 7th seasons, but it all came crashing down in the 8th and final season. It was a universally disliked conclusion to a story many looked at as the quintessential fantasy. This disappointment turned to outrage, and show creators Dan Benioff and D.B. Weiss got the worst of it. Online harassment has kept them quiet for a while now, and they've been backing away from previously announced projects. They were supposed to head a Star Wars trilogy, a huge deal. After walking away from that, they moved on to Netflix, where they'll be heading a variety of shows and movies for what was reported to be $200 million. So they'll be fine even after Game of Thrones' finale flop. Their reputation will never recover, however. To this day, a petition on change.org is growing to have Game of Thrones be remade by quote-unquote competent writers. Obviously HBO will not honor this online protest, but 1.8 million signatures is significant. It's interesting that only Season 8 is listed on here, because if you're gonna go through the trouble of a remake, you might as well do the whole thing. I'm going to try and be as realistic as possible here, because no reasonable network will go along with this only after a year or two. A remake would devalue the extremely profitable 8 seasons. Blu-rays, online sales, and the countless merchandise is still making them bank. What HBO is focusing on right now is a spin-off about the Targaryen family called House of the Dragon. It'll be a while before we see it though, especially with Corona putting all entertainment production to a halt. After some years have passed, and they begin to miss how much money was flowing during Game of Thrones' run, only then will they consider a remake. I don't know how the details of the IP contract George Martin has with HBO, but I would like to see Netflix give a go at the remake. The story can be handled very differently now that executives know that the series will essentially be a guaranteed success off the jump. As close to perfect as the first season of Game of Thrones was, slowing it down would help the story. But I understand the fast pacing they went with. It needed to start with a bang to quickly secure a fanbase with a budget of its size. Unfortunately, this meant a lot of characters and side plots were cut, leaving us with hindered world building and character development. With a guaranteed fanbase, you can afford to have longer seasons, and not stress so much about filling every episode with some action or nude scenes. Even with the bad taste in people's mouth after Season 8, people will tune in. I mentioned Netflix as a good choice because of how they handled Castlevania, a series I personally see as the best show on the service. Okay, hear me out here. What if the remake was an animated series in the same mature style? A lot of the more fantastical elements could benefit from this, and set designers wouldn't have to worry about finding locations to film George Martin's creations. An animated series would also differentiate itself from Game of Thrones. No reason to make Game of Thrones obsolete if you don't have to. I still can't wrap my head around the decision to have Season 7 and 8 have fewer episodes, when there was still so much story to tell. If anything, it should have been more than the previous tradition of 10 episodes. George Martin always expressed his belief in having around 13 episodes per season from the start. This time around, maybe honor the man's wishes, who has a lot of writing and TV experience behind him. I think waiting for George Martin to complete his story would be best for a remake. I'm following the source material very closely throughout. An animated series would allow for inner dialogue and extended flashbacks, something Game of Thrones desperately needed. The books are written in the point of view of different characters every chapter, and the bulk of it is inner dialogue that was needed to flesh them all out. And with all this lore written, there's no reason to exclude flashbacks. It took Dan Benioff and D.B. Weiss 5 seasons to realize the show could benefit from them. Cersei thinking back to her childhood memory of visiting a woods witch to have her fortune told was that first moment. Besides that, it was just Bran using his green sight to look into the past. If there isn't going to be a spin-off about Robert's Rebellion, which happens to be a very detailed and important part of the story, having it be a large portion of a season would be amazing. But since we're at least 7 years away from the story being complete, and that's being optimistic, I think now is the time to get production rolling on an ambitious RPG. Look at how successful the Witcher games are. A Song of Ice and Fire can do just as well. It's crazy to think how little effort has been put into developing one when there's such a big market dying to pay for it. 1.8 million people don't sign a petition if they don't care. The Telltale games are completely story-driven with little gameplay, so I don't count that. I didn't even bother playing it, to be honest. Hopefully meetings about a remake and a proper video game have been taking place behind the scenes. We only really know what they tell the press, so who knows. I'll keep you guys updated with any House of the Dragon news when it drops. But for now, like I said, everything's on hold, so the 2022 date might even get pushed. Sucks, I know. But anyways, hope you guys have been keeping busy and finding entertainment wherever you can. If you are looking for new shows, I highly recommend Castlevania, even if you are usually turned off by cartoons. This one's different. They really handled a mature tone well. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.